Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the state of the light heavyweight division, some potential matchups that we could possibly see in the future, and also I'm going to be talking about a matchup that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, a matchup that was speculated to possibly be happening around a year and a half ago or a year ago, and the matchup hasn't really been talked about recently. I'm going to talk about why, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on all of this, and let's get right into the video. So starting off this video, the state of the light heavyweight division, the reason why it's in this spot, I call it the Jon Jones curse. I think all of us can agree as to why, and this all is in part due to Jon Jones and his dominance, his absolute unheard of title reign in the light heavyweight division. What is it, like 13 title wins or something like that? Like incredible, like 10 title defenses. Jon Jones' streak at light heavyweight was unmatched. Of course, he had to vacate the title a couple of times, and we had guys like DC get the belt, and then he would go and fight DC, and he won. But at the end of the day, we all know who the real champ was. It was Jon Jones the whole time, youngest champion ever. I think he was like 23 years old when he won the belt, and he's still champion today at like 35 years old. That is absolutely crazy to me. The dude has been champion for so long. He has more title fight wins than Khabib has total UFC fights. And Khabib is regarded as someone who is one of the greatest fighters of all time. So just to put him against other guys in the GOAT debate is crazy. I think he's the undisputed greatest fighter of all time. And the dude's dominance is just, it was different. And it left a huge impact on the light heavyweight division, and it also left a very high, very tall order. And the status quo at the light heavyweight division was Jon Jones. No one's going to match Jon Jones, no matter who you replace him with, no matter how exciting the fights get, no matter how dominant your champion is. You're never going to be able to replace Jon Jones. That status quo was set so high. This is what we're used to at light heavyweight. And no matter how hard someone tries, they're going to fall so short of what Jon Jones was able to achieve. Basically, what happened was Jon Jones beats Dominick Reyes in 2020 and vacates the belt. He was dealing with a lot of stuff, PEDs left and right, beating up his wife, allegedly, hitting women with hitting pregnant women with cars, all kinds of stuff like that. Jon Jones vacates the belt in 2020 and didn't fight until 2023. He was out for 3 years, but he vacated in 2020. And the light heavyweight belt was taken up by Jan Blachowicz in that same year, where he fought Dominick Reyes and knocked him out brutally. Terrible. I mean, the fall from grace for Dominick Reyes is one of the worst of all time. It's up there with like Cody No Love. Terrible. It was terrible watching what happened to Dominick Reyes, a guy that literally beat the greatest fighter of all time, Jon Jones. Jan wins the belt against Dominick Reyes. Then he goes and makes his first title defense against Israel Adesanya after Israel Adesanya had knocked out Paulo Costa earlier that year. Israel Adesanya, this is during COVID, tried to move up to 205 without bulking up properly, and he just got outclassed. People talk about the size, people talk about the the wrestling and stuff like this. Jan Blachowicz not only outstruck, but he out-wrestled Israel Adesanya very dominantly and just completely manhandled him. The fight was not close at all. I scored the fight live, 50-45, Jan Blachowicz, complete domination. Izzy had nothing for him in this fight. He was getting outstruck, and people talk about, Jan only won the last 2 rounds because it was wrestling. Jan won every minute of this fight. He completely outclassed Israel Adesanya. This fight was not close at all. It was not competitive. There was a lot of cope going into this fight, but coming out of this fight, but it is what it is. And Jan Blachowicz, after defending against Israel Adesanya, tries to defend the belt again against Glover Teixeira, the old man that can. And Glover submits Jan Blachowicz, I believe, in the second round of their fight. Beat him up. Honestly, just beat him up. There was a power advantage for Glover. Surprisingly, it looked like there was a speed advantage. Jan Blachowicz looked like he had seen a ghost in this fight. It was crazy. And Glover just overwhelmed him. And he wanted that win so badly. You could tell he just wanted to become champion so badly. He broke through at 42, like Jon Anik said. And he wins the belt. at 42 years of age, which is absolutely crazy. And he starts his own title reign. And what ends up happening is after Glover beats Jan, Jan's got finished brutally. So, there was no discussion of him being the guy to get the belt. And what ends up happening is Glover attempts to make his first title defense against Yuri Prohaska. Or I'm sorry if I pronounce his name horribly. I apologize. He's one of my favorite fighters, but he is so exciting, and this fight was just gold on paper. And this fight ended up being, to this day, in my opinion, the most exciting fight I've ever seen, outside of one fight, which happens to be the first fight between Chandler and Alvarez in Bellator. But as far as UFC fights, I believe this is one of the most exciting fights of all time, if not probably the most exciting fight of all time. This is something you should show anyone that you're trying to get into MMA. This fight was just gold, dude. It was so good. It was so amazing. Just an effort from both parties to just put on an absolute war, and that's what happens. And Glover was winning the fights on the scorecard. Yuri had he had completely gassed out. He was making illogical decisions, which usually happens from both parties involved in a war of this caliber, especially. And both fighters were gassed, but Yuri clearly was suffering a lot more from the cardio end of things. And Glover looks like he's going to win. He's up on the scorecards. Everything's going in Glover's favor. And then in the 5th round, Glover jumps for a guillotine, gets on bottom. Yuri has his back. Yuri circles around. Yuri gets his back again. And, oh my gosh, Yuri Prohaska submitted Glover Teixeira in the 5th round with 30 seconds to go while down on the scorecards. This was one of the craziest wins I had ever seen in my entire life. I was screaming my head off. I was cheering for Glover in this fight just because, he's the old man that can, but I was not disappointed with the result at all. This fight was so exciting. So that's all I can really say about it. But basically what happens is Yuri Prohaska wins the belt, and everyone knows, okay, he was losing the fight. Not only was he just losing the fight, it was one of the most exciting fights of all time. We gotta run that fight back. So what ends up happening in the aftermath, after Glover Teixeira was defeated by Yuri Prohaska, they rescheduled the fight at UFC 282 in December, the final fight card of 2022. And it's a fight where, once again, Glover was the favorite. People are like, oh man, we saw what happened last time. If Glover doesn't make that mistake, he's going to win everything. We're looking for a war. This fight was going to be so exciting. And unfortunately, Yuri Prohaska injures himself in training. It was listed by Dana White, so take it with a grain of salt, as one of the worst shoulder injuries he had ever seen in his entire life. Terrible shoulder injury. So what ends up happening is, because the co-main event was Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev, that fight is made a title fight. And this fight was uneventful, I guess, at least in the last 2 rounds and the first round. But the second and third round of this fight were very exciting. Jan Blachowicz was tearing up the legs of Magomed Ankalaev. And Magomed, things were looking like, he was completely beat up. The first leg went out. Jan Blachowicz showed his leg kicks and his durability. Completely took out the first leg of Ankalaev. Ankalaev switches stances, and the second leg gives out from leg kicks. And it's looking like this dude can't even stand anymore. How is he going to win this fight? Ankalaev musters through and uses his wrestling. Suddenly, he just mid-fight remembers he has a grappling in his back pocket after completely forgetting about it, and dominates the 4th round, and also pretty much dominates the 5th round. 4th round was a 10-8, and the fight ends up going to draw. So Dana White was very mad about this because there was still no champion, because it was a draw in a fight for the vacant belt. Dana White was very mad, and in the aftermath of UFC 282, Dana White made Jamal Hill versus Glover Teixeira for UFC 283, the first pay-per-view of the year, and this was to take place in Brazil. This is a fight where we were like, okay, how's it going to go down? But, it's an interesting stylistic matchup, but at the end of the day, we look at Jamal Hill, who's been out-grappled many times, and even in one of his recent fights, he was out-grappled, and we were like, he's going against Glover Teixeira. Glover's going to out-grapple him. We could not have been more wrong. Glover was absolutely dominated by Jamal Hill, 50-45, 50-44 even maybe. Depends who you ask, but complete domination from Jamal. He just outstruck him on the feet, outgrappled him as well on the ground, and just completely won this fight wherever it went. And we were like, okay, this is what we're gonna get. Yuri is injured, but we still got other people in the picture. Eventually we're gonna get Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prochazka, and things are going on. UFC events are rolling through. The months are going by. And we just got word about 2 days ago that Jamal Hill has torn his Achilles playing basketball, and he's going to be out for around 9 months. And he decided to do the same thing that Yuri Prochazka did. He vacated his UFC light heavyweight belt, and now we're scrambling for a title fight. This just happened, and there's a lot of people speculating matchups. Okay, can we make Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz, which is a fight that's going to take place at UFC 291, headlined by Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje for the fake, clowny, corny, gimmicky BMF title? Can we make this Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz fight, a fight for the vacant light heavyweight title? And honestly, I don't believe you can make this fight for the UFC light heavyweight title. Alex Pereira, like I just mentioned, got brutally knocked out by Israel Adesanya in his last fight. And then you have Jan Blachowicz, who's coming off of a weird fight against Magomed Ankalaev, where he got dominated in the last 2 rounds and it went to draw. I mean, dude was coming off of a brutal loss, and then he gets a disqualification win over Alexander Rakic, where Alexander Rakic tears his knee, blows his ACL when he tries to step backwards. And then, he gets his fight with Magomed Ankalaev, which wasn't even supposed to be a title fight to begin with because he didn't deserve it, and then it went to draw. So if he didn't deserve it then, and then he went to draw, and a lot of people thought Magomed won, why would he deserve a title fight now? And then, like I just mentioned, Alex Pereira got brutally knocked out in his last fight. Do these guys really deserve title fights? No. Then you got, okay, well, Yuri Prochazka is going to be back long before Jamal Hill is going to be back. Can we do Yuri versus the winner of this fight? And I believe that's the most likely option, and I believe that's the most logical option, is that we do Yuri Prochazka versus the winner of Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira for the vacant UFC light heavyweight belt whenever Yuri Prochazka is back. I believe that's the fight that makes the most sense, and I believe that's the fight that will happen. But there are also 2 other fights that I don't believe people are talking enough about. One of those fights being between Israel Adesanya versus Yuri Prochazka for the vacant UFC light heavyweight belt. I do not believe that Yuri will be ready for August, as he already said he will not be. But at a later date, maybe Israel Adesanya beats Dricus. Maybe he loses to Dricus and he doesn't want to rematch him immediately. Regardless, a lot of people think he's going to beat Dricus Du Plessis. Not myself included. I am picking Dricus in that fight. But a lot of people think he's going to beat Dricus. What if he beats Dricus? There's literally no one else left. He'd have to wait for Ikram. He'd have to wait for Khamzat. What if Ikram loses and Khamzat still hasn't fought yet? There's not a single guy deserving a title shot in the entire weight class other than Dricus, if he beats Dricus, So there's the option to fight Dricus, or there's the option to move up, which is something that he's alluded to wanting to do a lot recently. He's been talking about, I want to move up. I want to get that second belt. I failed once, and I want that second belt. I want to be a double champion. If he wins that, if he becomes a double champion, Israel Adesanya has to be top 6 all time, in my opinion. But, Israel Adesanya versus Yuri Prochazka. I mean, who doesn't want to see that fight? That is an amazing fight. Israel Adesanya could lose. Yuri Prochazka could lose. That is an absolute barn burner. This fight cannot be boring. No matter who you put Yuri Prochazka in there with, it will not be a boring fight, other than maybe Magomed Ankalaev. But that's a fight that I really, really, really would love to see. I'd love to see any fight with any of those guys in them. But another fight that not a lot of people are talking about is a fight that was speculated to maybe be happening after the events of UFC 286, headlined by Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. And in this aftermath, Kamaru Usman posted a picture of himself standing next to Jan Blachowicz. And this is a fight where I'm not opposed to it at all. If Usman, coming off of a brutal KO loss and then a close decision loss, wants to move up 2 weight classes because he said he wanted to skip 185 because he didn't want to fight Israel Adesanya. If he wants to move up 2 weight classes to fight Jan Blachowicz for the vacant UFC light heavyweight belt, I am all for it. Book that matchup right now. I'd be ready to see it. I know all of you would be interested in watching that matchup, and that's a fight where it could go either way. Who knows? Usman's got the wrestling. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All that good stuff. These are matchups I'm really excited for. I hope you guys agree with me, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day. I am out.